think, can we by consent, that with the understanding she'll make that additional change? Does anybody want to vote on that separately?
All right. So on to discussion of TSBA policy services.
We wanted to bring this up, we have looked at this before in years past. TSBA does offer a service which not only keeps up with the laws and regulations and the changes, but they do an annual audit. They also will send us down with their changes so that we can change those in our policy committee meetings. We would still have committee meetings, you all would still have control of those changes. We would still meet and do basically what we do now. But once those changes are made, instead of us sending them to our technology and letting them keep it on the flip book, which we've had lots of problems with, our online policy manual, and making those changes, TSBA will actually house that policy manual for us. I will email them what we've changed, and they will do that. So it will take some load off of the technology department, as well as just help us with the laws that are ever changing and kind of keep us up to date with that. And as far as pricing goes, our ADM is around 12,000, so we would be 10,000 to 1499 in that price range. And we just want to bring this y'all to look at. It's not something that we're possibly looking at doing right away, but just something you'll have an information table, something that we do want to look at come next fiscal year.
Is there a reason that we're still doing flip book? I mean, if we go with TSBA, flip book goes away, correct?
Yes. What would happen, there would be a link on our website for the policy manual, and just kind of like it is now, when you click it, instead of coming up to our flip book, it would go to the TSB website with our policy manual there.
Because I guess I don't understand if that's a problem. We went to flip book because the former director wanted to go to flip book. I mean, if that's a problem, I don't see why we're still doing it. But, I mean, that's just me.
The technology department has a lot, when you go to make changes in the flip book, it is just a bear, from my understanding, to try to change. So it's taking them a lot of man hours just to make changes.
Which one of you were first? Mr. Beaver? Oh, sorry, Mr. Morrison, sorry.
Well, it's been so long, I've kind of forgotten what I wanted to talk about. Oh, I'm sorry. If we decided to pay the $4,000 a year annual fee, and I assume that's what we would do since we have a policy manual already.
Well, they would actually, for the $12,750, if we went for the customization, they would look at our policy manual in depth. The annual maintenance fee is just to send us, the laws that come down, that sort of thing, and to house it on their website. But if we wanted them to actually go through audit and look at our policy manual, we would have to pay the manual development fee.
Then my question is, with the monies that we would save in taking load off of our IT department and off of yourself and others, does that equal or is it greater than the $12,750?
No, it's not gonna take any labor off me. What it will help is in keeping us current with the laws. And to me, that's pretty important, that we're staying current with the ever-changing laws and that our policies are.
And I certainly agree. I guess that again, and I'm maybe playing devil's advocate a little bit here, but are we having trouble staying current with the laws now, or do we have instances of?
I mean, as we're going through our policies, we're seeing a lot of the laws and some.
But isn't that why we go through our policies?
Yes. But as I'm studying the references, we're seeing a lot of out-of-date references with our citations on our current policies. Because there was a length of time that the policies were not listed in depth. So we are now trying to fix that, but as we're fixing them, we've been, 6 months later, another law is changing. So it would be, it's just something to consider. As far as labor hours that we would save with this, I would have to look at that to see what that actually means.
Mr. Moore?
Okay, a couple of points on this. As far as the flip book, I don't know why we can't just have that. Why don't we have this loaded as a PDF, and every time we update it, we reload the PDF? That just seems very simple. Everybody has a phone or a computer that can read a PDF these days. It just, anyway, that's behind the scenes. Y'all can handle whatever you want, but again, I understand why the flip book's even still being used. As far as the services the TSBA offers, I'm kind of torn on this. On one hand, I see some major deficiencies in our current policy. It's kind of it's clearly haphazard. There's things that are conflicting with each other, and I would like to find some way to do that. However, I just haven't been very impressed with what TSBA has given us in the past, as far as staying up to date.
Really?
I mean, again, we're looking at what she just got for us on the, in regards to the family life planning. Again, from what Mr. Bates looked at, that also was not as up to date as it could be or should be. And we've run into that a couple different times, I think I've seen. So while I would like to have somebody that could do that, I just really haven't been all that impressed that we're going to get a good product. Again, even if you look at the promo they gave us, the lawyer, the attorney that was on that is no longer even with TSBA, so they've got someone now representing them completely different. So I don't even know what, if we would like to do that, maybe we'd want to have them come and actually give us a really good rundown of that. To go with that, I don't see any reason why we would pay them to host it for us. We're putting in a very expensive, nice website. I don't see why we can't host, again, a PDF on our own website. Again, that's just a service I don't see. What I would want to see us do if we are going to outsource some part of this, again, is to find somebody that can competently help us put together a cohesive document that is current legally, and make sure we're not contradicting ourselves within that document. I'm not really worried about the other services that, hosting it and doing other things. So I don't know if they would carve some of those things out or do it differently. That's the main things I would be focused on. And I guess that leads to the other question. I don't know, are there other organizations or legal services that would offer the same service, that would be able to align a document or help us create a document that's aligned to the state law and federal law in these regards? I mean, I'm sure there's we're not the first ones to go through this and realize that maybe we have some deficiencies in our policy. So I didn't know if you had any input or could look into that and see if there are any other parties that may be able to give us an idea of what they could offer. Thank you.
I'm with you on that one, Mr. Moore. As far as hosting it, I don't think that's anything that we really need to worry about. But we just went through this in Oak Ridge about a year ago. We do know that paying somebody to go through and make sure our policies are amended follows down the legal pathway, and that costs a lot more than $12,000 a year. We were impressed with the services we received from TSBA. Now, going in line exactly where, like I said before, where Mr. Lindsay is, TSBA leans towards policies being vague in nature and then not getting too in-depth, not getting too descriptive, because then you got to change it every single time. So that's why you see a lot of vaguity in a lot of their policies that they put forward. But then that's where you guys have the ability to say, no, I want to go a little more in-depth with this policy or that policy, but I'm okay with vague on this policy. So they'll track and keep changes in accordance with the law and present those changes to you guys, and then you guys decide what you want to do with those changes, whether you want to go in depth or whether you want to keep it vague as it is. But personally, for me, I would advocate partnering with TSBA to keep our policies up to date and keep a watchful eye for us. I think it will cost us at least twice or three times as much to have a lawyer do it for us and to keep us up to date on those types of things.
Okay, it was Mr. Bates and Ms. Parker.
Well, it's for the price. I'm a little bit squeamish. I mean, as far as what the charge is for the initial setup and then the annual fee. But then I also think, on the other hand, I don't want our policy committee meetings to be bogged down into housekeeping, and that is in some ways what we have. And it's just the nature of the beast. I've got the TCA right here. This is one volume of the educational statutes. There's a whole nother volume at my office that shows how many statutes the General Assembly is passing on a daily basis, or at least when they're in session, from January up until about April. They are passing laws left and right. And it would be great, and I hear what Mr. Moore is saying. I think we need to make sure that we would be getting this service for the price. But it would be very nice to be able to pay somebody else to help us do this housekeeping, to kind of keep our policies up to date, make sure it's following the current statutes. And then we can focus our attention on more meaningful discussions about real policy, about what is this board's objective that we want to try to promote in the district, and really having discussions like that and seeing how we may want to craft our own individual policies to make sure that this board's objectives are being carried out. So that would be nice if we can get that service for the cost, for us to be able to focus our attention on things like what the director is going to be bringing us here shortly about what are going to be the keys that our community are telling us that are keys to performance of our schools, and what can we do as a board to implement those things. So.
I know when we started discussing this, we did talk with Dr. Perkins, and there was money available this budget cycle. Obviously, if this is something that we want to hold off on until next budget cycle, then we would have to budget it in. But there is currently money available for doing this service. And personally, I think, we're having our meetings, taped tonight. I think it's somewhat embarrassing that we're behind. I mean, every meeting, and I love y'all, but 2 hours already. I mean, we need to be more efficient. And if $12,000 to get us to where we need to be, I think that is chump change for us. In the grand scheme of our budget, that is not much. So I think part of the problem is that we had this service before, we got away from it, and now we're reaping what we sowed by getting away from it and not doing the annual subscription and not keeping up with stuff. We're 10 years behind from when we last did it. So we can continue to go through it, and as soon as we pass something, be out of date and go back to it in 4 more years when we get back around to cycling through that section of the policy manual, or we can just bite the bullet and be on top of it. And I personally, I think with TSBA, they're going to come in and they're going to say, what do you want this policy manual to look like? You want it to be more specific? You want it to be as detailed on family education? They'll give you a detailed policy, I think, on the front end. Now, the annual subscription thereafter may not be the detailed version, but on the front end, we can do that work with them. And I think we need to do that. And I think that would help our board to figure out what we really want it to look like. Because as it is, we're going with what we got, and we know that what we got is not necessarily that good. And I personally feel bad. I mean, I know how hard Amanda and Wayne worked last year, and the policy committee last year worked, and just to see that how far they went, and there's still things that they did last year that are now out of date. So I just think we need to bite the bullet, and we need to invest the money in this, and we have the money available, and the annual subscription thereafter is not going to be that much, but $12,000 to make sure that what we're broadcasting right now, that we're in compliance, I think that's good. That's good money. So.
And I'm sorry, I see 2 lights, but I don't have the cue screen, so, Mr. Lindsay?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with Ms. Parker. As she said, I sat last year where she sits, and it's kind of frustrating, really, because we do spend a lot of time on policy. And as Mr. Bates found out, when you get into the TCA, we find out that not only are we behind one law, but the law's been changed twice since we've even updated our policy. And as Ms. Parker said, I think it's kind of a drop in the bucket for what we get. And my hope would be that every policy committee, or whenever if we decide to go with TSBA, that whenever they send down a new revision, that instead of us haggling over it for 30 minutes, we just take it and say, okay, here's TSBA's the law updates, and bam, 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 we go through them. As Ms. Parker said, I think it would help us be more efficient if we use it as a tool and not try to dissect everything that TSBA does. But I think it would definitely help us be more efficient and kind of clean up the mess that our policy is. And I don't want to say that and sound like I'm throwing anybody under the bus, but it's just we don't have somebody sitting around. We don't have an attorney in the central office that is sitting looking at these laws every day. So it's up to the policy chair, and it's up to Miss Alexander, Miss Hargrove, I'm sorry, and I'm sure she'll tell you she's got a lot more to do than sit around and update her policy manual all the time. So I think it would, she may love it more than anybody would, and I think it'd be very beneficial to us.
Mr. Dudley?
Thank you. I too agree that, you know, changes are coming about so quick that it's gonna be hard for our staff and our system to stay current with everything. The TSBA does have some insight. They've most of the legislation that's passed, they've got knowledge of it. And so at some point, you know, they certainly know more about it than we do. They've got a representative at the legislative body attending most of the meetings and all, and so they have a lot more insight, and if they're more likely to catch the items than we do. So I think it's something we need to probably look at doing. You know, I don't know if any of this, whether we need to have them come down and give us a discussion about detail about what it will offer and what it will do, but, you know, I think we need to definitely look at it.
Mr. Moore?
I'll be brief. Again, my main thing is to make sure we get a good product out of it. And if they can provide us a good product, I just have some reservations with that. But if they can provide us the product we're looking for, I agree with everyone else here. I think it's something we need to do. We need to move forward so that the policy committee can actually discuss the concepts of where we want to go, not just the text that happens to be on there to meet state requirements. So again, I'm in support of this. The cost is not really as big a concern. I just want to make sure we get the product we're expecting, and we hold them to that as we move forward if we decide to do something like this.
Further discussion? Did we have a motion? And my understanding would be that from what you were talking about, we would go through and potentially do the customization of the book, and then after that, they would just do the updates for us. So actually, we would get a year, they would do the book, and we get a year free service, and then if we choose to, then we would pick up the reoccurring cost.
And Mr. Torres said he would be glad to come down and do any more presentations on anything.
All right. Ms.
It's gonna
Martin?
offer motion that we go with that service.
And you want to make a motion that we go through and let them develop the manual, and then from there, wait? I mean, you want to start with that, or do you want to throw in the?
Just the.
Okay.
Yes. just
All
the
right,
beginning.
so we have a motion to go through and have TSBA do our custom manual development. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second, Ms. Powers. Any more discussion? Mr. Dudley?
I mean, I would sort of like to hear Mr. Torres or whatever it is come and tell us, you know, this is the service, this is what we're gonna do for you, rather than just say, we're gonna cut you a check for $12,000, you do the manual. I mean, I'd like to sort of hear from a TSBA representative to come to us next month, if we can, and then before we have a better idea of exactly what it is, as Ms. Moore said, make sure that the bill of goods they're trying to sell us is what we're wanting.
He can come for the January meeting on the 28th and do a presentation. That time you all should vote.
Mr. Moore?
Okay. That was my same point, and that would satisfy me if they could be at the full board meeting, that we could discuss it then before we take the vote. I would be okay with that, because I too would like to make sure that our expectations are what they can deliver. The second question is, and I just want to, I know it was mentioned, the funding for this, we do have it.
We have excess funds in longevity pay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so the question would be then for Ms. Merton and Ms. Powers, is that acceptable to you to have them come and speak at the January meeting and then make our decision from there?
Yeah, I think we could move to recommend it to the full board, and then we'll have to make a final vote there, but we'll have that additional information before we make a final vote.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second to carry this to the full board and hear from TSBA at the January regular meeting. So, no more discussion. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. And according to mine, the next thing we have is adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion and a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? You don't want a table? All right, we're adjourned.
Can we start community relations as close to 8:30 as possible?
Yes.
And everybody's probably